Welcome to the Pokescast. I'm Ryan Thorburn with the Casper Star-Tribune, joined today by Robert Gagliardi, my Border War book co-author and longtime Wyoming beat writer for the Cheyenne and Laramie papers. Now Robert's enjoying the good life with the game and fish. How are you doing, my man?
Doing great, Ryan. How you doing?
Hanging in there. It's been quite a grind. I'm getting tired just watching all these basketball games, and it appears that Graham Ike and the guys have kind of hit the wall here down the stretch, which is bad timing, but we're kind of getting ready here for Wyoming's last regular season game, Saturday against Fresno State, 2 p.m. at the Arena Auditorium. Robert, the Cowboys a couple weeks ago were ranked 22nd in the AP poll, looking like kind of a lock for the NCAA tournament. Now they've dropped 4 out of their last 6 and are on that bubble. I think they're still in almost every projection, but they're sliding towards the bubble where you get nervous. Just your thoughts on maybe what they need to do down the stretch here to get off the bubble.
Yeah, we were just talking a little bit about it before we started this, Ryan. It's, certainly Wyoming hasn't played its best basketball here in these last, losing 4 of these last 6, but it's also, they've been in those games. Moral victories don't count this time of year by any stretch, but it's not like they're that far off. But I think you kind of hit it. It seems to me they're kind of maybe hit a little bit of a wall, maybe getting a little bit fatigued with all the minutes the frontline guys like Maldonado and Ike are playing. Defenses have clamped down a little bit. They're not making some of the shots that they've made in the past, but it's not like it's there. I don't know. I'm curious your take. It doesn't seem like they're that far off, but they certainly have to find something or a second wind or something like that. I think a long way will go toward that if, they get this last one on tomorrow against, very good, very tough Fresno State team at home, try to get a little bit of momentum going into the tournament and then see what happens, and now, they're locked into that 4 seed. And look, at the start of the season, if you would have said Wyoming will be the 4 seed in the Mountain West tournament going in, people would have been elated. Now, I think it's fair to say there's maybe a little bit of a letdown with that, but then they get UNLV on their home court in that. And Ryan, you've covered a lot of these. UNLV basketball hasn't been relevant for a long time, and it hasn't been relevant at the Mountain West tournament for the most part since it's been at the Thomas and Mack. But not that UNLV basketball is back, but it seems like Kevin Kruger has them going in a very good direction. I don't think anyone that plays in the Mountain West tournament wants to play UNLV on its home floor. I don't care what seed you are or what it is. You just don't want to do it. And unfortunately, Wyoming's going to just have to do that. But I just think, look, try to get this win on Saturday, build a little momentum. Then they won't play again till Thursday, get some legs. And then, it's postseason time. So, but, I'm with you, Ryan, even when they were ranked 22nd and that was great. And, all the projections still have them in the NCAA tournament now. Look, I'm not a buyer. I think, I hope I'm wrong about this, but I think Wyoming has to, they got to win Saturday, and then they've got to at least get to the semifinals. Now, though, I think it's more, to me, they have to get to the finals. If they get to the semifinals, maybe depending on what happens in some of these other conference tournaments and stuff, maybe that's good enough. But I just got an inkling that they have to get to the championship game of the Mountain West tournament to get an at-large, but obviously they win the tournament, they're automatically in. But that's how I'm seeing this, and again, I'm not taking anything away from the Jerry Palms and Joe Lunardis of the world because they're very good at what they do, and I hope they're right. But I just think with this kind of little swoon that Wyoming's been on, I think the Cowboys have to at least get to the Mountain West championship game if they're hoping for an at-large bid. If not, I just, I see NIT, maybe other things will happen, but I think the Cowboys have to get to the championship game now.
Yeah, one of the stats I was blown away by, just, kind of following it from afar for the last 20 years, is that was their 19th consecutive loss to UNLV at the Thomas and Mack Center. That's crazy because, as you mentioned, UNLV hasn't been Tarkanian UNLV for a long, long time. So that's a little bit worrisome if you're a Wyoming fan, because the game will be in the Thomas and Mack Center next Thursday, Wyoming UNLV again. But of course, this time, Wyoming will maybe have even more fans than UNLV. The court is literally different. They take out UNLV's court and put in the Mountain West court and those sort of things. But it's still the same building and the same team and the same stat. So I kind of think if they beat Fresno State and then beat UNLV that they're in. But, you never know how many bid stealers are out there at the smaller tournaments and things of that nature. So you might want to just go ahead and win 3 in Vegas and not worry about it on Selection Sunday. One of the themes in the post game with Linder after the UNLV game, and they lost, 64-57. It was a toss-up game until the end. Maldonado was out of the game the first, for about 8 minutes in the first half after getting poked in the eye. We haven't talked to Linder yet before Fresno State. That's this afternoon, Friday afternoon. So we don't have an update on Maldonado. I think he's probably questionable, but then again, he's a senior and it's senior day. And, I don't know if they could get some goggles or something, but anyway, the theme was basically that the schedule was brutal, not just from who they were playing, but, they had played 3 games in 5 nights, 4 games in a week, starting at Colorado State, which is an NCAA tournament team. And then, Nevada, which was, a nice Saturday win. And then obviously San Diego State, which right now is a NCAA team. And then at UNLV, which is one of the hotter teams west of the Mississippi on their home floor. So brutal stretch. I think Wyoming hit the wall. I think they didn't have their legs. And, just looking at some of Graham Ike's stats, it's kind of, I wouldn't say alarming, but it's telling, if you just look at the CSU, San Diego State, and UNLV games, take out the Nevada game, they don't play much defense, which is why they're in the predicament they're in. Those 3 games I mentioned, he was 13 for 44 from the field. That's 29.5%. This is a guy, who was averaging, over 20 points a game. In those 3 games, he had 32 total points. So I don't know. I think that's a combination of teams defending him better, the referees swallowing the whistle a little bit in these bigger Mountain West games, and also just fatigue. So I think Graham Ike, he's going to have Orlando Robinson in here on Saturday, who's a 7'1" NBA center potentially. I think Graham Ike is the one who needs to get his mojo back, and I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think that's the way we've seen with this team all season, Ryan. When Graham Ike is going, so go the Cowboys, and the fact that, when he's effective down low, whether he's scoring in the paint or if he's getting to the free throw line, I think that's another thing too. He certainly was getting to the free throw line a lot. I think he was among the nation's leaders in fouls drawn and things like that. And that also has waned here in the latter part of the season. So, and then that opens so many other things up for, whether it's Maldonado or the outside shooters, Jeffries and all those guys. So I certainly would agree. But then the fatigue thing is an interesting thing, Ryan, because I think, we got to remember, not trying to make excuses for Graham, but look, had a knee injury his senior year in high school that basically cut his season short, or I don't think it eliminated us, but it, didn't play much. And then he came back a little bit last year and we saw the glimpses, and then he got off to such a great start. And now you wonder in a college season where you're in your 30th some game, if just how much that fatigue is setting in, because he hasn't played this much basketball in a long time. And again, not making excuses. And this is why you play the games. These are the important games. But you wonder not just the fatigue of the season, but even going back a couple of years. And even though you can do all the gassers and do all the off-season work, when you put in that much of a workload, you wonder how much that's taking a toll. And again, Graham's going to have to find that second gear, and Wyoming's going to have to do what it can to get him rested or get him, prepared for that. But that fatigue thing, I think, is not just a byproduct of perhaps this season, but the last couple of seasons, because this is probably the most basketball Graham Ike has played in his basketball career to this point.
Yeah, and now the other point I was getting to on this fatigue theme is it was a legitimate excuse. I mean, Linder doesn't want to make excuses, but it was a legitimate thing that happened to this team over the last 4 or 5 games. But now you get back from UNLV, you have, a couple days to kind of get your legs back a little bit. And here you're sitting, hopefully on your couch watching Fresno State take, San Diego State into double overtime. I stayed up for that, until midnight, because Fresno State ended up losing by 1 point to San Diego State in double overtime. That locked Wyoming into the 4 instead of having a chance at the 3, because the tiebreaker, even though if Wyoming beats Fresno State, they're going to have one more Mountain West win than San Diego State, but that head-to-head is actually what is going to be the tiebreaker, and they only played them once. So I stayed up and watched that, but now you have no excuse in this last game because Fresno State, they're at San Diego State at sea level. They play double overtime, late Thursday night into Friday. And then they have to get up and come to Laramie. And, regardless of what happens in the season finale, they will have to start their Mountain West tournament on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. Whereas Wyoming, regardless of what happens, won't start until Thursday. So the rest is starting to catch up a little bit for Wyoming, where some other teams are still going through a gauntlet. So I don't think that will be an excuse, particularly in the first round. I think they'll have some time to kind of get ready for that. And it's going to come down to making some adjustments in the scouting report that you just went over a few days ago when you do face UNLV next. And, there's really no excuses. You need to beat Fresno State and you need to beat UNLV, and then let the chips fall where they may in the semifinals, which could be Boise State for a third time, which, would be a high quality loss or win, or maybe Boise State has to deal with Nevada again, who gave them a nice game the other night when they had when Boise clinched the championship on their home court against Nevada. So, I think from a rest standpoint, things are starting to even out just a little bit. I'm not saying these guys are going to be fresh like they were in November, but the schedule's starting to lean in their favor a little bit when you look at everybody's schedule and what they're doing.
Right. I guess, Ryan, I'll throw this at you. You mentioned the Graham Ike stats, and that is telling and stuff. But over these, in these last 6 games, even when Wyoming's won a couple of those, what else have you seen the teams are doing different? What are they doing different against Ike? Is it just matchups? Good players guarding them. Are they doing anything against Maldonado? We talked a little bit last week where, before the CSU game, they needed, their shooters to step up a little bit. And we've seen that in glimpses. Jeffrey's stepped up against Colorado State. Ducell has played a little bit better. Is there any other, not alarming things, but any other trends you're seeing aside from the Ike stats that we've gone over that's led to some of the Cowboys' struggles over these last 4 to 6 games?
Well, first of all, I would say that Wyoming has been playing some really good high-end elite players. David Roddy and those guys refused to let Maldonado or Ike even get the ball anywhere near the basket. So they had a great scouting report, a great game plan. Nico Medved said afterwards, we were going to let, basically Jeffries and Oden and Ducell beat us. And they made some great shots, but not enough, because we were not going to let Graham Ike go point blank or Maldonado do his back down and hook shots and all those moves. And they got the ball out of their hands or made Ike take, contested shots, and he was off that night. So they had a great game plan. They have great players. Nathan Minza is by far the best defensive player in the Mountain West, maybe one of the best defensive players in the country. They let him go one-on-one with Ike down the stretch. Ike took, I think, 3 jumpers over Minza in the last couple minutes when the game was in the balance, missed all 3 of them. So that's a little different approach, but with the caveat that nobody else really has a Nathan Minza to throw at you. UNLV, I wasn't there. I was watching it, on TV like everyone else. It appeared to me that he got pretty good shots. Maybe settled for the jumpers more than the going to the glass a little bit, but I think he got the ball where he needed it. He was just, off. I think he was 6 for 19. So that might've been the legs. Maldonado, I think, played okay considering he had one eye and, nearly left with a triple double. So I think from that standpoint, it was just fatigue more than anything. I mean, it's obviously very concerning the way they're finishing down the stretch here, but I think there is hope that they could get it back like they did, last week against Nevada. Maybe, Fresno State's going to present a whole different challenge. They're number 2 behind San Diego State in defense in the Mountain West and right up there at the top nationally. So it's not going to be easy, but you are at home. Orlando Robinson, those guys are going to be coming in a little weary. So, I think for the UNLV rematch, it's going to come down to, again, not letting Bryce Hamilton go off. And Wyoming did a tremendous job on him the first time, 3 for 15 shooting. They obviously did a tremendous job on EK. So it's going to be a matter of the role players coming through. UNLV's came through huge the other night.
And that's, not trying to jump ahead too much to the UNLV game in the tournament, Ryan, but you brought up a good point about Bryce Hamilton. We've seen him this year just actually go off on people. And even in a stretch of a game where he's maybe a little bit off, then all of a sudden, whatever, he can turn it on. And, that was great what they did against him earlier in the week. I agree. But man, to me, that's a pretty tall task for Wyoming to do that again. I'm not saying it's impossible or they can't do it again, but that Bryce Hamilton's probably thinking about that, going into next week too. So that'll be very interesting because Bryce Hamilton is the kind of talent where he can take over a game. There's a handful of players in this league that are that way, and he's certainly one of them. And maybe you could argue he's the best one at that. So that'll be another interesting thing to look at come Thursday is how does UNLV adjust to what Wyoming did against Hamilton the first time and vice versa. How does Wyoming adjust? So, because if Bryce Hamilton goes off on him, that could really be bad news for the Cowboys.
While I've got you here, I'm going to be doing Jeff Grammer's All Mountain West team here this weekend as the season ends for the media side of it. Man, it's tough this year.
Mm-hmm.
Player of the year candidate, I would think the favorite at this point has to be David Roddy. Wyoming obviously had 2 candidates there in Maldonado and Ike who've fallen off down the stretch just a little bit, especially Maldonado. I think he should still be considered, but who else are you going to put on that first team? You've got, you mentioned Bryce Hamilton. He's leading the conference in scoring right up there nationally as the top scorer nationally. We saw Matt Bradley the other night at the Arena Auditorium just put on a display. I think he's clearly San Diego State's bread and butter glue guy, best player. We mentioned Menza. He's going to be the defensive player of the year, but, even though he doesn't average a lot of points, how much weight do you put into that in terms of all Mountain West teams? Justin Bean is a double-double machine. Boise State wins the league, a week early. They have Kejab and Shaver and Degenhart, guys that aren't putting up monster stats, but are just tremendous Mountain West players. And then, Orlando Robinson coming in here on Saturday is obviously probably the best NBA prospect. And he's elevated Fresno State's program a little bit. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, we haven't even mentioned a lot of players that were on it last year, Nevada's guards and AJ Walker, and it just goes on and on. We saw New Mexico's guards were dynamic. I mean, this is really a good league this year with a lot of good players. How would you kind of stack up your, let's say, top 5?
Man, that's hard. I don't envy the guys that are, where it counts certainly, but obviously I think I'm with you. I think obviously Roddy is a first teamer and the player of the year to this point. I think you got to go there. I think you got to put Matt Bradley on there as a first teamer. This is how I would do it. Again, whatever that means. I probably put Maldonado on there, and I know it's been somewhat of an up and down near the end, but he's done so many things so well, not just the scoring, but the rebounding, the assists. I mean, he's kind of the do everything kind of guy. I think EK was making a very strong point a couple weeks ago, but I think with his recent struggles, I think that bumps him down to the second team if I had to choose right now. And then then after that, I mean, I don't, Boise's is good, but now the freshman you mentioned, I think he's the freshman of the year. I don't know if I see maybe Acott maybe is on the first team, and then you got Robinson, but then where does Justin Bean and even Isaiah Stevens for CSU? arguably one of the best point guards in this league. Maybe he is the best point guard in this league. So I guess I go with Bradley, Maldonado, obviously Roddy. Obviously, he's probably the number one choice. And then I probably go with, I don't know, Acott, I guess. How do you have a team? I don't know. I guess this is maybe flawed thinking, but how do you have not one first teamer guy on the team that wins the league? I guess maybe that just says just how good Boise is because it's not just one guy. That's actually a compliment to the Broncos. And then the fifth guy, I mean, Robinson. I mean, I don't think all conference teams players shouldn't be on there based on their NBA potential, but Orlando Robinson's good. I mean, you just look at his numbers and what he can do is, I mean, he's a 7-1 center, but he's got a perimeter game. I'd probably throw Orlando Robinson on that first team, but you mentioned Bean, go down the list. You can go down the list of almost every team in this league, maybe aside from San Jose State, and make a solid argument that there's at least one guy on those teams that deserve first team recognition in the Mountain West this year.
Yeah, to your point about Boise State, whenever I've watched them, and I've watched, quite a few of their games, I think their best player is Key Jab. Mm-hmm. So you said Acott, Shavers obviously hit a bunch of buzzer beater or late game situation shots. I think Key Jab, in my vote, will be the highest. And the way we're going to do it is you just vote 1 through 15,
Right.
Your top 5 are first team and then so on for 3 teams. Obviously I think Roddy, Maldonado, and I'm going to say even Orlando Robinson are probably locks for first team. Mm-hmm. And then I think a lot of people are going to put Bryce Hamilton because of the scoring and because UNLV is, exceeded expectations, especially in the Mountain West play. Mm-hmm. So there's 4 right now. And I really think Bradley needs to be on there. But when it comes to Ike, I mean, if you're going on how they're finishing, obviously he's going to get dropped down to second team. But when you look at his season, he's still second in the Mountain West in scoring, second in rebounding. I haven't checked today, but that's where he's been despite this recent slump. I mean, those are 2 pretty big categories there.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. It certainly wouldn't surprise me. And I'm not saying Ike is not deserving of first team. He certainly is, but I'm just wondering how that vote will be. And but I guess do you see a scenario, Ryan, where on the first team, whether it's, you're doing with Jeff, you'll do the Mountain West one as well, or maybe you've submitted that Boise State won't have a first team player. And again, that's not an insult. If anything, that's a compliment because Boise is arguably, maybe it's not even an argument, is the most well-rounded team in the Mountain West this year. But do you see a scenario? Do you see it as a distinct possibility that Boise does not have a first team all Mountain West player, whether it's on Jeff Grammer's list, it's on the media list, or even the coaches list? Because now I still think they do that separately now. Do you see that? Do you foresee that?
I think that's very, very likely because, I've got it down to like 6 or 7 guys for first team. And then I have, Key Jab and Shaver on that next level. So it's tough. And that's why I think because of, if you look at the whole season as a whole, I think Leon Rice is the Mountain West Coach of the Year. I know Linder was a heavy, heavy favorite a couple weeks ago and very deserving. They were picked tied for 8th. They were right in the mix. But now you look how it's played out. Boise State, without a superstar, with a collection of really, really good players, has won this league. And Wyoming is the 4 seed, which is still way above expectations, but not, it didn't come down to that last Saturday between them and Boise, obviously. So I think Leon Rice is the Coach of the Year based on what he's done with this collection of guys who, by the way, are all older players, seniors or 5th-year juniors, that type of thing.
Yeah, and I was just going to get asked that about the Coach of the Year, and your point's well taken, Ryan. I know Boise wasn't picked in the bottom half of the league by any means, but they win their first outright Mountain West championship, and really, since the loss to Wyoming and Laramie a few weeks ago, I don't think they've lost. And again, but it's interesting because we were talking about Ike earlier about, his season stats are still right up there, but then we were talking about his latest swoon. But you look at at Linder, it's interesting how, whether, a lot of these where you're looking at all conference stuff or even coach of the year or freshman of the year, a lot of those things, do you look at the whole body of work, or do you sometimes focus more on how things are going near the end of the season? And I'm not saying one's right, wrong, or indifferent or anything, but it's interesting how you kind of look at it, because Boise's been pretty good, not pretty good. Boise's is having its greatest basketball success under Leon Rice, whether it's this year, last year, even since he's gotten there. They've always been very good. But then you look at Jeff Linder. Yeah, I know the Cowboys have lost 4 or 6, but look at what he's done with 23, 24 wins, and yeah, they're the 4 seed, but picked to finish tied for 9th, so it's just interesting how people think of it, and they have every right to think of it how they want. So that'll be interesting. I kind of lean toward where you're thinking on that, but maybe if Wyoming hadn't lost 4 of the last 6, if even gone 500 or, won 4 of their last 6, I think maybe that would have been more of a slam dunk for Linder. But it's interesting because if you look at the whole body of work, though, what Linder's done has been, very, very impressive. And it still is. No matter if he's voted coach of the year or not, that doesn't take away what he's been able to do with this group of guys this season at Wyoming. I think, you've talked to Jeff Linder. I haven't had a chance. When I left the beat was when they were still looking for the basketball coach. So I've not talked to Jeff Linder, never interviewed him, never done anything with him. I don't think those things really matter to him that much. But whether he is the coach of the year or not, that doesn't take away what he's accomplished this year for the Cowboys.
Yeah, it's been a great story, obviously, and we're looking forward to covering the ending here over the next few weeks. So can't wait for that. Before I get you out of here, Robert, we need to talk about the Cowgirls. Here's a team that quietly is the number 3 seed in the women's Mountain West tournament. They have won 9 of their last 11 games. I went to their senior night the other night against Colorado State. They beat the Rams in overtime. And as luck would have it, they will almost certainly play the Rams in the quarterfinals of the tournament, assuming the Rams beat San Jose State, the 11 seed. So that'll be a 3-6 Border War trilogy rematch. So just your thoughts on the Cowgirls. Obviously, they returned Tommy Olson, Quinn Weideman, Alba Sanchez Ramos from last year's great run where they cut down the nets in Vegas without fans. Mm-hmm. They add in, super freshman Allison Fertig. McKinley Bradshaw has emerged as, one of the great scorers in the league. It's really a nice starting 5, and they have a couple nice bench players, but Gerald Mattinson has the hottest team in the league going in to try to win the tournament again.
Yeah, it's been great to see the Cowgirls turn it around after, a shaky start, an up and down start, but they certainly kind of found their way, and to look, to win 9 and I don't care what conference you're in, how good it is, or how, whatever, you win 9 of 11 games at the end of end of a season like this, heading into tournament play says a lot, but kind of talking about the men with their kind of tough matchup with UNLV on their home floor. You just beat your rival in a close game at home, and then you got to turn around in less than a week and play them again, or in about a week and play them again. And that's just tough, but it is what it is. But I think you just build off of, I'm sure Gerald Mattinson's like, I don't care if we're playing Colorado State or, UNLV or New Mexico, you go what got you there, and it'll be interesting that the kind of the chess match within the chess match of the coaches of having played each other so recently, of how each adjusts and how the other coach adjusts to those adjustments, so to speak. So that'll be interesting. But I think if you're the Cowgirls, just do what you've been doing until someone stops it. You know what I mean? And I think to me, that's kind of the mindset you got to take, but that's tough. It's hard to, they split the regular season series. It's just hard to, repeat that. It's a good rivalry. Colorado State's been very good. I think they were probably leading this league at some point early this season. They were expected to be good, and they are. They're quality team, and would be floored if they lost to San Jose in that first round game. But I think if you're the Cowgirls, do what you do. Maybe make some subtle adjustments here and there. Just keep doing what you're doing and hope we can go on another magical run. But it's been great to see. Happy for the girls, happy for Coach Mattinson and the staff. after, the incredible tournament run they made last year to be playing. I guess all you can ask for, Ryan, as a basketball coach at this time of year, come tournament time, is to be playing your best basketball. And right now, I think the Cowgirls are. I'm sure as a coach, there's always things you can improve on. But to win 9 of 11 going into the conference tournament, I think most coaches around the country would take that.
Yeah, and the 2 losses, one was at Air Force, who had the best season they've ever had in women's basketball. In that game, they were down 2. She shot a 3 at the buzzer that literally went halfway down, spun around, and came out, where that would have been a win. Mm-hmm. And then their other loss was at Fort Collins, where they had a bad quarter, bad third quarter. Otherwise, they would have been, in great position to win that game. So they're also the only team in the league that's beaten both UNLV, the regular season champion, and New Mexico, the number 2 seed. They beat them at the pit on a Tommy Olson 3 at the buzzer. So you can't have more confidence than they have right now. And also based on what they did last year, it's a totally different circumstance. There will be fans this time. And I was joking with Madsen about the scouting reports. I mean, they're already done. I mean, they just did them.
Right.
He said Ryan Williams, just knowing him, the CSU coach, that he'll have some sort of different defensive, approach, subtle, to maybe kind of throw off Tommy Olson or try to. And he said Wyoming will have a couple subtle things in their back pocket, whether that's angles or things that you won't even notice, on TV. But it's going to come down to Tommy Olson and Quinn Weideman and Alba Sanchez Ramos, and particularly McKinley Bradshaw making buckets. Wyoming's been really good defensively all year, and they've been up and down offensively. So just like the EK Maldonado situation, they're going to have a night where they're on it offensively to beat the Rams back to back.
Yeah.
And if they do win this game, that New Mexico doesn't really want to see the Cowgirls in the semis. They won't say that, but I'm guessing they'd rather play the Rams, given Wyoming's fan base and given the momentum Wyoming has and given what happened in the pit. And UNLV women who just lost in Laramie ended a 12-game win streak for them. They don't want Wyoming either. Nobody wants Wyoming, and that's a good place to be. But rivalry games, you just don't know.
Yeah. And, with the women's tournament, Ryan, and, look, the Mountain West has been good on the women's side too. But unfortunately, the Mountain West is still a 1-bid league for the Mountain West. Right, wrong, or indifferent, say what you want, but it's still a 1-bid league. And that's unfortunate. It'd be nice to, that it wasn't. And, you could probably make a case that, UNLV, New Mexico, that, Wyoming, that there's good basketball here, but this is, winning you're in. There's no, even if New Mexico and UNLV, the top 2 seeds, are playing in the championship game, the loser's playing in the WNIT. This isn't, we got a couple at-larges. This is really win or go home, so to speak. So that also adds a little bit more intrigue and drama to the women's side of the tournament, because it is, that on the men's side, CSU's going to the tournament, Boise's going to the tournament, San Diego State's pretty much looks like it's in, as long as they don't have a horrible, first round loss, but the women's side, it's like your winner's in. And after that, it's, pick your poison. WNIT or the other, I think there's a third women's postseason tournament. And those are nice. Don't get me wrong, but that's just a little bit more of the drama to the women's side when it's just, when you're a 1-bid league.
Yeah. And to his credit, Gerald Madsen knew this when he took over for Legursky, that this is a 1-bid league, and he designed his program or his approach for the Wyoming Cowgirls to play their best basketball in March. They went through a brutal stretch in January where they lost at Boise State and at Utah State, 2 teams that are not good. They lost back-to-back to them on the road and just played awful. And he wasn't thrown by that. He's like, it's a lesson. We've got to go get back to cowgirl basketball and finish strong and get ready for March. And he, in October, he said, it's all going to come down to Las Vegas, and we got to be playing our best basketball in Las Vegas. Last year, they won the Mountain West tournament for the first time. So they've designed their whole structure for these 3 games, and they have the confidence. It's worked out where they are playing their best basketball. And the fact that, UNLV and New Mexico have, 24, 25 wins, they also in the back of their mind know it's a 1-bid league, and that puts a lot of pressure on them to get it done, because they've had great seasons, but 1 loss and you're headed to the WNIT. So that puts the pressure on them. I think the Cowgirls probably have some pressure on them as well, being the 3 seed and trying to win this thing again.
Yeah. And another thing to kind of keep an eye on, at least after the tournament, no matter how the Cowgirls do, I remember when Joe Legursky, retired after, his run at Wyoming, Gerald Madison took over and he signed a 3-year contract. And he basically said, he goes, I can commit to 3 years. Okay. He was very very poignant about that when that happened. And this is his 3rd year now. And, I think they have a plan in place. Maybe you know more, but I'm pretty sure Heather Ezell, the associate head coach, they've been grooming her even while, Coach Legursky may have been there, even grooming her a little bit. But that's just another interesting little maybe caveat to keep an eye on, is if Gerald was animate that it's like he can give him 3 years. And if, again, if Wyoming doesn't win the Mountain West tournament, there will be a postseason opportunity for them, whether it's the WNIT, and I know there's even another one. What's going to happen? Will there be another changing of the guard, so to speak? So just something to kind of keep an eye on there too, because this may be Gerald's last run as a head coach. He's done what he said. Now, if he's got it in him, where he wants to do it 1 more time or 2 more times or sign another 3-year contract, all the power to him. That's great. But I gotten to know Gerald a little bit in the time when I did the chances I got to cover the Cowgirls, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Usually when what Gerald says he means, so that'll just be kind of interesting come, whether it's after the Mountain West tournament or whatever postseason opportunities for the Cowgirls, what's going to happen there.
Yeah, unfortunately, for whatever reason, at this point, I don't get it at all, but for whatever reason, both basketball programs are still doing Zoom interviews at this point, which is absurd that they haven't changed that. So I haven't had a chance to get to know these players or Gerald well. It's all on Zoom. It's tough, and I'm not complaining. I mean, it is what it is. It's a pandemic. I get it, but it's tough when you see the guys that cover Colorado State men come in and go down and talk to their players in person and their coach, and you're on a Zoom with Linder and the crowd's still exiting. You can't even hear. I mean, it's ridiculous. So that being said, I haven't had a chance to, these are the kind of questions you would ask in person.
Yeah.
Are you going to retire? Are you coming back?
Right.
Seniors, even though you did a ceremony, you could come back. Are you coming back? Or have you thought about that yet? My sense is that Gerald will probably retire when their last game is done. And that, to your point, I think Heather Ezell would probably make a lot of sense as a smooth transition, someone who has a great resume and appears to be ready to be a head coach. And my other sense is that a couple of the seniors could be back. So this run may not be over. So that's just my sense. I'm not going to report that unless the people that are making their life decisions, want to tell me that, yeah, I have made that decision official. But that's my sense, is that this will probably be it for Gerald. But there's a really good chance that the run could continue on with maybe a couple of key seniors coming back, and you have 2 of the best players in the Mountain West who also happen to be from Wyoming. Bradshaw and Ferdig are obviously not going anywhere and are great players to build around. So that's just my sense of it right now. We'll see how it plays out.
Real quick, is Ferdig hands down the freshman of the year in the Mountain West for women's basketball? I
think so. I think she's the Deegan-Hart of the women's side. I mean, she's won freshman of the week 5 times. Even the other night when CSU did a great job of not letting her get the ball deep to score, she had, I think, 6 key rebounds down the stretch and a block down the stretch. So she can do it on both ends, and she's still kind of raw, to be honest with you. I mean, she's a developing player. You know, when you dominate in high school like that, and there's no one close to your size, and then you get to college, and like we mentioned with Ike, now she's playing 30 plus games. That's a big adjustment. And that's got to be exciting for Wyoming Cowgirls fans to have two players this great that are from Wyoming is pretty cool. Not to mention Tommy Olson, you know, grew up in Worland. That's pretty unique.
Yeah, it's been a great run for the Cowgirls, and hopefully they continue it. And heck, Ryan, we're postseason basketball. It doesn't seem like that long ago we were just getting ready to talk football, you know, and now, you know, we got the NFL Combine for Chad Muma coming up this weekend, and spring football starts in 2-3 weeks down in Laramie. And gosh, where's the time go, man? Because it just seems like yesterday we're just talking about the start of football season. Now we're in tournament basketball time right now.
Yeah. So we'll get into spring football when spring football arrives, but for now it's the best time of year, bracket time. So Robert, thanks so much for your time. Maybe with the power of Zoom, which I was just lamenting as far as being a media person, it is great for certain things. And hopefully we can do this maybe when I'm in Vegas, if the teams are making a run or that sort of thing. You know, I know you'll be up watching some of these late games. And the good news for the Pokes on the men's side is I think they're locked into a day game now on Thursday, which is good for deadlines and that sort of thing. So.
Well, yeah, first and foremost, deadlines, because that's how we operate. That's how we're wired. But a day game playing the home team basically on their home floor, that's better than the prime time slot when you could get maybe more people. I mean, you take any little advantage that you can there. Yeah,
Wyoming fans will be lubed up and ready to go no matter what time the game is. And I think UNLV fans probably aren't going to flock and rally behind this team unless they get to the semifinals. I think then all of a sudden the Mountain West is on alert that these guys could steal a bid.
You're right. But one thing though, Ryan, I wish we could do this podcast in Vegas together, but I hope you get a chance when you get down there. You know, I know you're going to work hard. You always do, but hope you have a chance to have a little bit of fun, whatever that means. You know, if you play little cars, slots or whatever, got to have a little fun in Vegas. You know, it's a lot of work, especially covering two teams, and there's a lot going on, but man, I hope you get a chance just to, have a little bit of fun. Cause I understand from past experience, there's a little bit of fun to be had in Vegas. Yeah. And from what I've heard, they stay open late. So nothing closes. So I'm glad that hasn't changed, man. I'm glad that hasn't changed. All right. Thanks, Robert. We'll talk to you hopefully next week. All right. Sounds good, Ryan. Thank you.